Joburg. Yeah. So this morning we have some beautiful talks, some incredible women that will be speaking to us. We have three speakers. And first up we have Myrtle Clarke from Fields of Green for All and the Dacha couple speaking all things women in cannabis and her thoughts on that.
Oh, it's so nice to be here. I'd just like to salute those sisters who I don't know. Very pleased to meet you. And it's also very nice to see some powerful forces in South African cannabis here with us today. So, Megan, we say thank you very much for this awesome event. We know that you guys have been planning for months and months and months. Thank you to Emily Moon for hosting us today in the beautiful place. And I'd just like to give a mention out to Sister V, Sister Joanne from Hogsback, Sister Rihanna, who I've known for many, many, many years, to Amy and everybody from Chiba, to Bianca, to everybody for supporting us here today. Thank you so, so much. It really is a privilege, and myself and my crew are very, very pleased to be here. So now when I was thinking about what to say today, it seemed like such a vast subject, and how do you narrow it down, and what is the most important thing, and I also have to take into account some very strong views that I hold about women's place in the cannabis industry worldwide. So in my life, I've been very, very blessed to have a series of teachers from quite a young age. The first of those teachers were certainly plants. So I thought that a good place to start would be to celebrate, as women, our teachers and those plants that have taught us what we know, and first and foremost, the cannabis plant, because we use the flower. We celebrate the flower. The flower is the crowning glory of the plant, and she's a female. So I was thinking about that, and then I was thinking, no, one of my teachers once told me, the time of separation is over. And she's a particularly wonderful, beautiful woman from southern United States. She's from Tennessee, and her name is Jean White Eagle. And she was an opera singer back in the day. And she got called, she had a dream, to create something that became known as the For the One dance. And this is a dance for peace. And her and her husband, John Pearson, then gave up their corporate jobs. John was working for DuPont Chemicals, of all things. And they found each other quite late in life, and they joined their visions together, and they started these dances all over the world. They've danced on every single continent, from everywhere from Sweden to Chile, but particularly in places that were ravaged by violence and war. They went to Palestine, they went to Israel, they got Palestinians and Israelis to dance together. They came to South Africa. They've done dances in the mountains, in the cities. And this dance is to say that the time of separation is over. And this was certainly, when I was thinking about the speech, one of the most important things. Because while we as women have our issues, it's to sort out those issues. We have to sort them out with the men. So that is my first message to you today, is that the time of separation is over. We as women are not sitting in our corner sorting out our problems. We need to engage everybody. And I think that is where I can come back to cannabis as the greatest teacher. Because when Julian and I were first arrested, and sort of 6 months later we sued the government, and our lives changed forever. I was launched as an activist into a very, very male-dominated space, certainly in my urban environment. The stoners were the men. You went to a gathering, and I was almost always in the minority as a woman. But over the last 11 years, I've seen more and more and more women coming to the fore. So I think that it is a given that we are sorting out this problem of separation in the South African cannabis industry. Because if I look at our list of affiliates, affiliate companies that support us with their monthly donations at Fields of Green for All, I can say that we are nearly getting up to half women-owned companies. So I think that we are getting there. But one has to really, as a woman, one has to really, really pay attention, maybe more so than men, because there is this patriarchy. There is this thing that will take many, many more generations to overcome. So if we're going to look at this, we need to know where did it start? Where did this patriarchy start? I think it started back in the caveman days, you know, as something that was very, very important to our evolution of the men going out hunting and the women doing the gathering and the home keeping and all of that. But we're in the 21st century now. So our challenge is that separation, is bringing the genders together. And as we're bringing the genders together, our genders are diversifying, because thank goodness, as a human race, we are evolving. And we're starting to recognize that the gender is not a cut and dry issue. And this is something that's very, very new. Maybe over the last 5 years or so, this has been something that is our society is being forced to evolve with. So we have a lot on our side, while we still need to really, really pay attention. And I really believe that our feelings, while not wanting to discount them, are less important than what needs to be done. Because we can privately deal with our feelings, but you will see that if we take action, and we follow our dreams, and we don't stand back as women, and we stand up because we've got no choice but to stand up for what we believe in. If we take action, then our feelings are dealt with, and we have less and less resentment. You know, you have gatherings like this of majority women, where you can meet other people, and we're not left in our feelings of being the lesser gender, or we're feeling we're being discriminated against and all of that. So if we take action, our feelings are less important, not in a bad way, but they become resolved. They become resolved. So I'm just going through, I jotted down a few points, and I'm just going through, these are just my random thoughts, and when I've run out of things to say, you can ask me any questions, or if you disagree with anything that I say, please speak up. If we take women in South Africa and that picture, I am incredibly heartbroken for the women out there who have no safety net from the law. And those of you who have heard our speeches over the years will know how much we hate the police. Okay. And people say, oh yes, but they are good policemen and all of that. Yeah, but where are they? And I also want to know, where are the women in the police standing up for the terrible human rights travesty and unconstitutional police rampage that happens when it comes to cannabis in South Africa? And there's no safety net for women in the law in general. The other day I was listening to the radio in the car, and I heard a heartbreaking story about a woman in Mitchell's Plains whose both her children had been shot in drive-by shootings. And we know that when it comes to crime in South Africa, it is so often the women who are left behind. They lose their men, they lose their breadwinners, they lose their children, and the women are left carrying that flag. And there's no recourse when it comes to the law for any of us women. There's no recourse for me. It's over a year since Julian was murdered, and there's no investigation. And went recently down to the Diepsloot police station, and I just lost it with the detective. And the next minute there was 3-4 burly men coming into the room and saying, "What you doing? Why are you making so much noise?" Blah, blah, blah. And I said, where's the woman policeman? Go and find a woman to come and deal with this hysterical woman, you know? And then they sort of led me out of the building, but I'd had my say, and I went past a door that said, "Victim support." And I said to these big burly men who were escorting me out of the police station, I said to them, "And the victim support?" They said, "Oh no, there's no victim support at Diepsloot police station." So I think the call to action for this is that we really, really need to support each other when it comes to victim support, because there are many ways in which women are victims of the police, and men too. And when men are victims of the police, then the women are left holding the baby at home, you know? So it's a kind of a no-win situation for us, and I'd be very, very open to any suggestions on what to do about this other than shouting louder and louder and louder, you know? And just to demonstrate how widespread this is, I've got 2 stories about family situations and the police. The first one happened soon after Julian and I started our campaign. I got a call from a woman in Pretoria, young woman, with a baby who was 6 weeks old. Her and the father of the baby had broken up, and the father and his family were trying to get the baby away from her. And they made her take the 6-week-old baby for a drug test because they were convinced that she was smoking dagga and breastfeeding the baby, and they were going to use this to take her small baby away from her. And she phoned us in absolute desperation. It was early on in our campaign, so we weren't in a position to really know what to do. And I said to her, "You know what, you're going to have to take the baby, and we'll deal with it afterwards." And luckily the baby's drug test was negative. So it was fine. Now she has 3 beautiful boys. She's in a happy, loving relationship. But she's also, she knows. She knows. She is still one of our greatest supporters. When we had the trial of the plant in Pretoria High Court 2017, Suzette works at some lawyers in central Pretoria, and she used to pop over and visit us at lunchtime every day because she had that knowledge that you can't give to anybody unless you've had that horrible run-in with the law and authorities. Then the second story was something that was really recent. A dear friend of mine, member of my extended family, also had trouble in his relationship. And there were certain drugs involved, not only plants and what, and that both of these 2 people in this couple went down the road with a few of the ugly drugs. But when the relationship finally fell apart, obviously the mother got to keep the children, she then subjected the father of the children to drug tests, okay, including cannabis, over a 2-year period while they were fighting it in court. And there was a period of 8 months where that father didn't get to see his children at all. And every single week he had to pay, this was a man who lost his business through COVID, he had to pay 300 rand, 600 rand, 800 rand for all these drug tests in the desperate bid to see his children, okay? And who did that to him? The mother of his children. So it's also up to us to call out those women who do this and use cannabis as a weapon against their partners when the relationship doesn't work out. So it works both ways, you know? I think that it's very important, and lots of women do that to men. I'm leaving if you don't stop smoking weed. Yeah, yeah. No, you're not going to see your children if you don't stop smoking weed. Well, that story also has a good ending. The court case is not nearly finished, but about 2 weeks ago, they were all in court, and the magistrate said, right, you are by law, as the father of his children, allowed to consume cannabis, and you're allowed to have cannabis in your possession, so enough with the drug tests. Yeah. So, you know, if you hear of a woman who is holding the cannabis use against a man, lots of women do it. So this is not a linear argument. You know, it works both ways. So let's stand by our men, let's stand by our sisters, all at the same time. So South Africa in many ways has been forced to make progress on issues of women's rights. And while it hasn't been a focus of our women's rights hasn't been a focus of our campaign over the last 11 years, it always comes in some way, you know, always comes in. Now in 2018, we were involved with an international group of people that we met at the United Nations in Vienna, and we were contributing authors to this book, Cannabis and Sustainable Development. Now, we often hear about the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, over and over again. There are 26 Sustainable Development Goals as have been outlined by the United Nations. And these goals have been designed in order to have some sort of a benchmark for countries who are way behind in sustainable development. These goals are also really famous for having the goalposts moved. I remember when we started, it was Sustainable Development Goals for 2015. And then at the time when we were writing this book, it moved to 2030. And I believe now the goals are for 2060. So they're a bit kind of elusive. But they, internationally, I think they're a really, really good benchmark to think about, you know, goals to have there, to model ourselves on. There are 26 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And while we were working on this book, we identified 17 of those that can certainly be helped along their way by cannabis. So that's quite a large proportion of those goals, that if we get sustainable, evidence-based regulations and laws around the world for cannabis, then we will go some way to achieving the wider goals. So I just wanted to read to you out of goal number 5. Goal number 5. Some of the headings for women in cannabis and how to achieve equity in the cannabis space. So there is always discrimination against women in law enforcement and criminal justice settings. There's discrimination against women in healthcare settings. We need to promote a gender-sensitive model for legal cannabis markets, and we need to provide equal rights and access to ownership and control over land. Now that last point is one that I really want to make. Because in our day-to-day lives, we can make a difference. But when it comes to issues of land in South Africa, it really, really is an issue. Because we know that in many of our rural settings, it is the women that work the land. We also know in the areas where there's large amounts of cannabis grown, it is the women who transport it. Once we were visiting our friends here in Judah Square, And this woman arrived, and there was great jubilation for this woman who just arrived. And Brother Maxie said to us, "You must please meet this woman. She's really amazing." She'd just come out of 3 years in jail for transporting cannabis up to Gauteng in a taxi. And the first thing that she did was to come and visit her community. And it really brought it home to me that women are, in a lot of times, left with their menial jobs. And because they may be not profiled as strongly as men, it really is a fact that women are still to this day relied on to transport cannabis along our highways from the rural areas to the urban areas in South Africa. And I don't think that men, certainly in the rural setting, have given women enough credit for the amount of risk that they've taken for the community's well-being, you know, for all those bags and bags of cannabis in taxis all over the country. So one needs to look at, to get back to the SDGs, one needs to look at the bigger picture of all the different areas where women are discriminated against in the cannabis space, and recognize the hardships that women have gone through for this plant through our 100 years of prohibition. But there is good news, because in June 2021, the High Court made a ruling that had to do with the Ingonyama Trust. I don't know if you remember that ruling. But the Ingonyama Trust, which is that huge piece of trust land in KwaZulu-Natal, governed over by men and male chiefs, that since 2012, they decided that in order to secure the tenure for the small farmers within this huge, huge trust area, they would require those farmers, those people who held tenure to those small pieces of land, to pay rent. Now, we all know in South Africa that in our rural areas, and certainly on that trust land, a lot of the men have left and they've gone to work in the cities. So it is over 80% of women who are meant to hold the tenure for that land in the trust. And thank goodness there were some awesome, awesome legal teams who stood by the people there, and they fought those men in that trust. And they fought for many years. And eventually they got the ruling that it is unconstitutional to pay rent, and the trust has to pay back over 90 million rand, mainly to women farmers in that Ingonyama Trust. So we have our constitution on our side, but it's the constitution that we always need to point to, because it often gets lost along the way in the small details. And that's why we have to remember that all cannabis regulations, all laws that are laid down in South Africa have to pass constitutional muster. Because at the moment, the conversation that we're getting on the ground, most of those laws and things that they are proposing, both in the draft cannabis bill and in the cannabis master plan, will not pass constitutional muster. Certainly, I don't see anything in the cannabis master plan that gives provision to women. And you know, the South Africa loves shouting about women's rights. We're kind of up there. We've got one of the highest number of women ministers in parliament of any country in the world, you know. So we must use that, and we must try and pinpoint our women in parliament. I had a great conversation with MC Meth, who is the Minister of Agriculture in the Eastern Cape, MEC Meth. And I said to her, you're a sister, you must look after us. You must look after us women. You can't allow the men to dominate the conversation. So find out who those women people, women are in leadership positions, and tell them about your role as a woman in cannabis in South Africa. Now, we've always said since the beginning of our campaign that you can't get what you want unless you know what you want. So for those of you that don't know, we published this on 4/20 this year, Cannabis in South Africa, the People's Plant, a full spectrum manifesto for policy reform. And in here you will see the issues of sustainable development and women in cannabis discussed at length, as well as all sorts of other issues that are central to women in some way. Because we, with our reasoning, with our feminine wiles, can influence, we really, really can influence the way that things go in South Africa. And we can influence that by being the voice of reason, by pulling in the reins. If you've got a partner who says, oh, I'm going to make gazillions out of weed, you know. I have found, and this is totally my judgment which I own, I have found when those people, all those people who overthink cannabis and who are wanting to make it into this huge, big, gazillion, million, squillion business, okay, and who are saying cannabis is going to save the world, cannabis is going to save South Africa, that's all the men. When we do quite a lot of consultations for Dacha private clubs, people who are looking to open clubs and all of that, and it's all the men who come in, oh, I'm going to have 1,000 members in 6 months, you know? It's all the men who say that. Meantime, the women know back at home that they've got to keep the pot boiling and look after their family, their friends, their community first. You know, women often have so many responsibilities that we have to concentrate us close to us. So I think one of my calls to action is rein those men in. Cannabis is not going to save the world. It's not going to save South Africa. The only way that it's going to work is if we bring it home. Okay? No discrimination, no judgment in the home. Look after yourself, your family, and your community first. And then once those we are established and secure with our small little pockets everywhere, then we can speak about, clubs joining together and everything. But we've got to have that security of tenure, just like we need the security of tenure of our land, we need the security of tenure in what we're going to do. And the most failed cannabis businesses, and I promise you they're failing all over the place already, are those ones that get too big too soon. Yeah. Rein yourself in, keep it small, because then you've got a handle on your integrity. You've got a handle on what is happening, and I think that's really is a responsibility of ours. So that's in the home, that's keeping it small, that's keeping it local, that's supporting those around us. And then I think if we had to take that little microcosm, make it into a macrocosm, we can look around the world. Now, one of the great failings of the South African cannabis industry is that who are they looking to for inspiration? Who are they looking to for guidance? They're looking to Canada, America, and Europe. And that is why it's failing. And that is why they're threatening to make a plant limit of 16 plants per person. Because they're copy-pasting from Canada, America, and Europe. Where we need to look is we need to look in the global south. If we look back to the history of cannabis in Jamaica and the history of cannabis in South Africa is absolutely parallel. Cannabis was also brought to Jamaica by the Indian indentured laborers in the 19th century. Cannabis was brought to South Africa by Arab traders and then eventually to southern Africa, the port of Natal, they used to call it, and that by Indian indentured laborers. And over the last few years, a lot of the big, particularly Canadian companies, have been investing in the Caribbean and all of those small islands. And then what happened in February last year? Canopy Growth pulled out of South Africa and the whole of Africa because it just wasn't working, because we hadn't changed the law yet. They were racing ahead and trying to make it into this big corporation. They pulled out. They gave a $2,000 donation to Fields of Green before they left. So I had the last word, yep. What happened in Jamaica? Aurora, Tilray, and Canopy pulled out of the Caribbean. And then there came this amazing, you can find it on our website, amazing paper that was called the Great Jamaican Failed Medical Cannabis Experiment, because that's what they do. They came in and they wanted to make it all about medicine, and they absolutely didn't care about the people who had been trying to defend their cannabis industry under prohibition for such a long time. So if you want to look out into the broader sphere, I really suggest that we draw our inspiration from the rest of the global south. Plus, we could also add in countries like India, Nepal, Indonesia, and Malaysia, okay, which are in the north. But in the south, if we look to Jamaica, to the rest of the Caribbean islands, to places in Central America, to Colombia, Guatemala, Ecuador, all of those sort of places, they are going through the same thing as we are going. Mexico, exactly the same thing. They get these half-assed, wishy-washy laws. They also have terribly corrupt governments. They also have huge problems with poverty and crime. So if you do get to speak to any government people, ask them, what do you know about what's going on with cannabis in Jamaica? You know? Leave Canada, leave Europe and America. They're getting on with what they're getting on with. We need our inspiration from there. And today, when I was getting dressed, I thought, right, I'm going to say this thing about the great global south. So I wore some earrings from Mexico and some silver from Peru. So these were gifts from activists who'd visited us at our home in the Jazz Farm. And so I'm just wearing these pieces of jewelry in solidarity with all of our sisters from around the world. And I'm hoping that Amy, who gave you these earrings, she lives in the Yucatan in Mexico. I hope that she's watching. She usually watches most of our live streams. And if there's anything that I've raised today that you'd like to chat about, we are very, very easy to get a hold of. We're on all social media platforms, and our website, fieldsofgreenforall.org.za. Please stay in touch. We also have our weekly Hotbox show, which is transmitted on YouTube and Facebook every Thursday night at 7 o'clock. This month, we have got lots and lots of women-themed shows coming up, and we've got some really interesting people coming up. Sister V was our first guest for Women's Month last Thursday on the Hotbox show, and we're looking forward to having a lot more of our sisters on the show during August, but not only during August, also going forward. So once again, thanks to Emily Moon. Thank you to my amazing crew for supporting us and for live streaming against all odds today. Thank you to all of you who are watching at home and around the world. And all I'm going to say to end off is, Viva my sisters and Viva Amadacha Dacha.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Thank you, Mer. It's incredibly powerful. In my panic, I realized I didn't introduce myself. I'm Amy, and I'm very lucky to have a group of super powerful and influential women around me. I'm from Fields of Green for All, and then I also I'm a part of a duo called Two Girls, One Bowl, and we are a woman cooking cannabis little Instagram and YouTube show. So that's me. But next up, we have Lisa and Megan from the Sativa Sisters, and they're going to be chatting CBD and THC with us.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm absolutely honored to be here and to be talking amongst some familiar faces, new faces, and basically just to introduce myself, my name is Lisa. I first came across the incredible benefits of this plant at about 9 years ago when I met my husband. I was never a smoker. I would smoke and pass out basically, and wasn't aware of the benefits of the plant, and my husband used it to treat his epilepsy, and he opened me up to an incredible world where I was at the time in hospitality, working in a kitchen, and started experimenting with cooking with cannabis and edibles, and really just dove into this incredible world. I'm not used to talking in front of a group of people, so I have my notes. Then I won't talk. So yeah, I'm basically just to speak about the benefits. I think it's so important for us working in, open up a shop and a club, and got to talk to people and experience a lot of the misconceptions that people have. There's still so many people out there that are too afraid to take CBD because they think it's going to make them high. So as Myrtle was saying, I fully agree. If we ourselves are educated, and have a greater understanding of how the plant works in our bodies, we can then educate the people closer to us that have these misconceptions and start breaking up the stigmas in our families, friends, direct environments. So we also need to acknowledge that cannabis isn't for everybody. People have different views, and delivery systems, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of topic. So just dating back with the history of women in cannabis, women haven't been, it has been a very male-dominated market, and as legalization is spreading globally, it is amazing just to see how many women are coming to the forefront and making a difference in so many different ways, especially in South Africa. And in this day and age, women more than ever have so much pressure to be moms, sisters, wives, and still have a career that cannabis has helped us not only recreationally, but for stress, anxiety, depression, and many other medicinal benefits too. So while it is unsubstantiated, many people believe that Queen Victoria used cannabis for menstrual pains. Her physician said in 1890 that when administered properly, cannabis is one of the most valuable medicines we possess. And it's believed that she was given cannabis in tincture form. If you don't know what that is, it's a concentrated form mixed with a carrier oil and then generally taken in drop form. So that was something back in the 1800s, whereas dating as far back as ancient Egypt, it is believed that women used cannabis there too. Is it magic, or how does it work in our bodies? So basically, just on the medicinal side, we all have what you call an endocannabinoid system, what's also known as the ECS, which is the largest receptor system in our bodies. So, for example, dopamine, serotonin are similar receptor systems. The receptors are found in different parts of our bodies, and basically the ECS is like the body's supercomputer that regulates homeostasis within our bodies. So CBD and THC interact with these receptors, and THC will be your compound that has your psychoactive effects, and CBD has no you can't get high off of CBD. Basically, to focus today on the uses for women, because there are so many different uses for cannabis, specifically speaking to ladies out there. One of these is a big one, as we've mentioned, the menstrual pains, is pain in general. It has been clinically proven that cannabis relieves pain, and it actually regulates the way our bodies perceive pain. A woman that suffer from migraines, headaches, pains associated or an inflammation with diseases of the uterus. I've seen firsthand how women have experienced with endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, how their symptoms have been treated significantly, and it's really, really helped. Then again, menopause. While menopause cannot itself be cured, it is believed that it's still CBD and THC can really help to relieve the symptoms of menopause. Women suffering from heavy periods, gastrointestinal disorders, even eating disorders. I've heard of people personally that have also, although it's relatively new and being explored, I saw on one of Chiba's craft cannabis seminars the other day that there's a new compound that's being THCV, as far as I'm aware, that's specifically more for weight loss. Then there's your therapeutic uses, of course, that many people use it for sleep, stress, anxiety. That was something that personally in my journey, I went through a stage where I was put on anti-anxieties, antidepressants, sleeping tablets because I was in such a high stress environment. And I felt like I was a walking zombie. I couldn't talk to people. I couldn't function. I felt like I just wasn't myself. And I don't know why. I had stopped smoking weed at the time. I think it was what the doctors had told me. You can't smoke weed and be on this medication. And I couldn't. I think I lasted about 3 or 4 weeks. And there was nothing that helped me like smoking a joint or a bong. It really, sleep, calming aid, it really changed my life. And from there, I was like, a different perception, different views on medicine and doctors. There's also, of course, the skin benefits, and Megan's going to speak to you guys a little bit more about CBD, and cool, thank you.
Thanks, ladies. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. And thank you to all of you for being here today. I'd also like to take a moment to thank Leon. I know he's not here, but when I first contacted him and said I'd like to get involved, he was like, well, why? Why do you want to be? And I was like, well, because I'd like to see more women in cannabis, and I suppose if I want that, I've got to step up and do it, So that's it. And most importantly, thank you, Myrtle. Thank you for everything you've done for this community. It is such a pleasure and honor to be sharing Women's Day with you here today. Thank you. So a little bit of an introduction. I have a CBD health shop in Sedgefield. On the 10th of July was the 2-year anniversary of that shop being open. And I was looking at opening a health shop in 2019, and then they gazetted the rescheduling of cannabis, and I saw that as a great opportunity to get this medicine and herb out to people. And I took a leap of faith, and I opened up the shop, and I haven't looked back since then. It's been a wonderful journey so far. So when people do come into my shop, there's a lot of questions. People don't know what they're looking for. I want to try this, what's that, what's this? So the first thing I explain to them is that we have 3 types. There's an isolate, a broad spectrum, and a full spectrum. And an isolated is only CBD. A broad spectrum, generally, from my understanding, is that it is a range of cannabinoids, but in the distillation process, they remove the THC. And then there's the full spectrum, which has the full range of cannabinoids, CBD, CBG, CBN, obviously depending on the plant that it's used and what the range of cannabinoids is in there, and it's also got terpenes and flavonoids. So a full spectrum oil has a range of cannabinoids, and they say that it's what's called the entourage effect, that the range of cannabinoids work better together. So that's the first thing I talk to people about. And then obviously, as women, we are interested in the skin benefits of CBD. It predominantly has anti-inflammatory properties. So things like eczema and psoriasis, it is incredibly beneficial for. I have seen phenomenal results. people that have struggled for 12 years with eczema, and they just don't know what to do. And they try a CBD balm, and it's life-changing for them. It sorts it out. CBD is also, over time, our skin loses its elasticity from, say, harsh exposure to the sun or air pollution or smoking. And CBD helps regenerate or helps our skin's elasticity. It also helps with the sebum production. So people who struggle from acne, it's very beneficial for. It helps with sleep. So we all know a good night's sleep with less bags under the eyes. Look much better. And stress. I mean, stress, it helps alleviate a lot of stress. So we know what that does to us. And then the next thing I'd like to talk about is CBD and COVID. And this is, I'm quite intrigued that there's not more information out about this, because I watched a fascinating webinar by a pharmacist called Brent Murphy. And he explained how beneficial CBD is, firstly to prevent COVID, and secondly, if someone does get it, to help them recover. And the way it does that is, firstly, its anti-inflammatory properties. Okay, just give me a minute. I'm just looking for my notes here. Okay, so what he explained was that CBD down-regulates the H2 receptor, which in effect hinders the virus's spike protein to bind. That's the first thing. It also prevents the entry of the virus. And how he explained it was, if you can imagine a spacecraft coming in and landing on the mothership and docking in on the mothership, and then all these people come out the spacecraft and get into the ship. CBD prevents that from happening. So it literally prevents the entry of the virus. It also has a direct antiviral activity. It reduces the ability of the virus to replicate. And it is also an immunomodulator. It neither suppresses nor stimulates. It's all about bringing the body back into homeostasis, bringing the body back into balance. Healing happens on a cellular level. This is why it's so beneficial for so many different things. As Lisa mentioned, stress, anxiety, insomnia, irritable bowel syndrome, arthritis, aches and pains. It really, there's a lot. And also for our pets. It's so great for our pets. The oldies that have arthritis as well. I've seen phenomenal results. You know, with 2 years of having the shop, I get a lot of feedback. And for me, it's been really interesting to see how beneficial it is and how, so I'm very, very, very grateful for that. So I think that's all for me. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies. Oh.
How amazing is this plant of ours? Okay, thank you, Lisa and Megan. That was really informative. And as a woman healing my PCOS and endometriosis, I wouldn't be anywhere without my dacha. It really is life-saving. So then our last chat for today, we have Tash from Pot Snobs, which I'm really interested to hear about.
Thank you. It's quite loud, okay. So I got thrown under the bus today, and I have absolutely nothing prepared, so I'm just going to speak from the heart. My name is Natasha, and I am a female farm owner in Knysna, just in the forest, and an entrepreneur, and something that I feel very positive about is women in business, especially with cannabis, and taking over a world that we have been suppressed in for so long. But as Myrtle had said, sharing space with such amazing women today, not pushing the men and walking that path with them. I'm fiercely feminist, but never at the expense of our male counterparts. It's about growing them at the same time as growing ourselves, but taking over an industry where we've always been suppressed for so long. So I'm a farmer. I run a 32-hectare farm and guest house, all on my own. And cannabis is something, thank you. It's something that I'm super passionate about. It's changed my life so much. I've literally been smoking since I was 16 years old. And it sorted a lot of my body issues out, health issues, and it's really something that in my day-to-day I use all the time. My kids are fully aware of it. It's open in my home. I treat my children with CBD, THC tinctures for their anxiety. Yeah, we're very open about it. And as something as stoners we all love is food. so munchies come with that. And I have a little dinner club called the Pot Snobs, which we host at our farm. It's basically an opportunity for different growers to showcase what they've done in their 6, 8, 10-week period, and for people to get together, meet each other in different circumstances, and kind of kill that stigma of dacha smokers in the backyard smoking bottlenecks. I mean, maybe once or twice we've done that, but we've evolved. So it's a 5-course meal that is paired with 5 different strains of cannabis. Nothing is infused. Each course is terpene and flavor paired, so it's really just about the weed and the food. So we smoke, we discuss what we've smoked, how we feel about it, what the tastes are, and then we eat a meal that is prepared by a 5-star chef. And so we go on throughout the night. So we've had a couple of them. We're on Facebook and Instagram, so it would be awesome if you guys could look out for that. If you're in the Garden Route area, we are a 420 friendly lodge. So if you book ahead of time, we will make sure that there's clean bongs for you, that there's papers behind us, so that you don't have to travel with anything. And if you kind of want some local cannabis, we can hook that up for you in case you're flying and you don't want to travel with it. So such an amazing day. Thank you so much, Megan, for putting this together and to share such amazing space with Myrtle. And thank you. Enjoy your lunch on that food note. We're going to go down and eat some good food.
Thank you, ladies. That was amazing. So as you said, on that note, let's go eat.